In this section, we'll be exploring two important concepts in data quality or research quality in the context of qualitative research. And those are construct validity and reliability. And we'll place a special emphasis later on how they relate to ensuring the quality of your data. First of all, let's take a look at construct validity. Construct validity focuses on ensuring that the questions or instruments that you use actually measure the concept that you aim to investigate. In qualitative research, this can be really challenging, as it often involves open-ended questions, interviews, or observations, rather than more straightforward numerical measures like we would see, for example, in quantitative methods. One of the key strategies to ensure construct validity is to use multiple indicators for it. For instance, in an interview, you would ask various questions that aim to capture different dimensions of the concept. The aim is that by covering more aspects, you increase the chances of truly understanding the concept from multiple angles or understanding multiple aspects of a particular idea. However, while you do want to cover a broad range, you also have to make sure that the participants can respond to the questions within a reasonable time. We talked about that before in the context of feasibility of research. It's therefore really important to pilot your instrument first, whether it's an interview or another form of data collection like an observational method or a case study, etc. And before the actual data collection begins. And by piloting, you can test whether participants interpret the questions as you would have intended, and you can assess whether the questions capture the dimensions that you actually want to measure. For example, if participants struggle to answer a question, it might indicate an issue with the wording or the placement of the question in the interview sequence. And that lack of clarity ultimately affects the data quality that you receive. And doing that piloting phase also allows you to adjust for items for clarity and relevance and enhancing the validity of your instrument as a result. So in other words, good questions or indicators are those that allow participants to respond confidently and clearly. Poor ones, on the other hand, cause confusion and hesitation. It's really important when you want to aim to get the perspectives or ideas or opinions of individuals that you are very clear about what you are asking from them, that the questions are clear and not ambiguous. After piloting, you'll therefore want to refine your questions and perhaps remove or modify those that don't perform very well, and keep those that really capture the concepts that you aim to investigate. Let's turn to reliability now, which is the second quality indicator. And reliability is often referred to as dependability in qualitative research. Reliability focuses on the consistency of your data collection process. In other words, if you were to repeat the process, you were to do the same interviews or same observations in the same context, would you still obtain the same results? While this is easier to establish in quantitative research, for example, if we measure something twice with an hour in between and the measures are more or less the same, we can assume that perhaps they are reliable. It becomes more complex in qualitative settings. Reliability should be approached in two main ways. One, through stability over time, and two, through internal consistency. Stability refers to whether participants would provide similar responses if you ask the same questions at a different time under the same circumstances or in the same context. Internal consistency, however, looks at whether the different items or questions you are using work together to capture the same concept. For example, if you want to aim at understanding someone's happiness or satisfaction with a particular exercise intervention, do all the questions that you ask them in the interview actually probe that happiness, or are some of them probing different constructs than others? Achieving consistency in qualitative research is really tough because the data collection process is often less structured. Remember, we called it subjectivist. Still, there are steps researchers can take to improve their reliability. For example, training interviewers is crucial, especially when you use unstructured interviews. Interviewing requires a specific set of skills to minimize biases and ensure that the questions are asked consistently. Therefore, familiarizing yourself with recording devices and other tools and the methods you'll use will also reduce technical mishaps that might affect the quality of your data. Additionally, spending time in the field helps increase reliability. Prolonged engagement with the people you ultimately interact with allows you to understand their contexts better and therefore collect richer and more accurate data. When transcribing interviews, it's also essential that you include all of the nuances. For example, when does someone pause? Which kind of intonation do they use? What are overlaps? Because these details can affect the interpretation of the data. Now, how people often do that is alongside their transcription, they often keep a journal or a logbook that basically organizes all of their thoughts as they are transcribing the interviews or coding or developing themes. Finally, reliability can also be encouraged through techniques such as triangulation, and we'll look at it in a second. But basically, triangulation is where you use multiple sources or methods to cross-check your findings, and auditing the research process to ensure that it was conducted thoroughly and transparently. So how can you further ensure the quality of your data collection in qualitative research? Well, one key principle that researchers have to adhere to is to document every part of the process thoroughly. Rigor is demonstrated through extensive data collection, and that can be used in the context of triangulation, like you see in the image here, to ensure that you are looking at the research question from multiple perspectives. Perhaps you have some data sets that can support the qualitative research through interviews you're already doing. Perhaps someone else has made observations, or you have also made observations that you've written down in your logbook. Perhaps you've specifically interviewed a single case that really relates to the subject matter that you're investigating. And all of that evidence combined then triangulates to give you a particular direction. So triangulations ensures that you are looking at the research question from multiple perspectives. Of course, that requires clearly documenting the procedures and the contexts under which data was collected, and that allows researchers to assess the transferability of your findings. If they were to conduct the same process, are they likely to find the same thing? And that's especially important in qualitative research, where generalizability, as we mentioned, might not always be the goal. Sometimes the goal is just to say something about the sample at hand, not to infer from that sample to the population from which it originates. Additionally, in the context of quality, you should always keep in mind that data collection procedures evolve. And that's especially true in qualitative research. And when this happens, it's important to note the turning point in the design and to justify those changes to ensure that the study always remains transparent. So in summary, by focusing on construct validity and reliability, while also continuously documenting and justifying procedures, people who use qualitative research can significantly enhance the quality of their qualitative research data. As such, those strategies help you collect better data, and they also allow you to provide a stronger foundation for interpreting and then communicating your findings.